Call this real Township Council meeting. Welcome, everybody. Township Council agenda meeting of June 1st, 2021. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Law by filing a notice in the office of the Township Clerk and by posting the meeting notice on the bulletin board at the municipal building on December 18th, 2020, where it has remained posted since that date. A legal notice appeared in the Daily Record and the Newark Star Ledger on December 22nd, 2020, and was forwarded by fax to other local newspapers on December 18th, 2020. Council meetings are videotaped and aired on Cablevision, Public Access 21 at 11 a.m. on Sundays, and are also available for viewing at www.parsippany.net. Would you join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Karifi?
Here.
Ms. Grignani?
Present.
Ms. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. DePiero?
Here.
Okay, also in attendance are Mayor Michael Soriano, Township Attorney Jim Lott, Business Administrator Fred Carr, CFO Juan Uribe, and Township Clerk Colette Madden. Council President, we have a quorum. You may begin.
Thank you. Upcoming meetings, June 15th, 2021 at 7 p.m. our regular meeting, and July 6th, 2021 at 7 p.m. our agenda meeting. Presentations, Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Okay, this June 4th is National Gun Violence Awareness Day. I'd like to read this proclamation into the record. National Gun Violence Awareness Day, June 4th, 2021. This proclamation declares the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence, and to declare that we as a country must do more to reduce gun violence. Whereas every day more than 100 Americans are killed by gun violence, alongside more than 230 who are shot and wounded, and on average there are more than 13,000 homicides by guns every year. And whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to die in homicides by gun than people in other high-income countries. And whereas New Jersey has 445 gun-related deaths every year, with a rate of 5 deaths per 100,000 people. And whereas homicides by gun and assaults are concentrated in cities, with more than half of all firearm-related gun deaths in the nation occurring in 127 cities. And whereas municipalities across the nation, including Parsippany, are working to end the senseless violence with evidence-based solutions. And whereas protecting the public safety and the communities they serve is a mayor's highest responsibility. And whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from people with dangerous histories. And whereas mayors and law enforcement officers know their communities best, are the most familiar with local criminal activity and how to address it, and are best positioned to understand how to keep their citizens safe. And whereas gun violence prevention is more important than ever as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to exacerbate gun violence after more than a year of increased gun sales and increased calls to suicide and domestic violence hotlines. And whereas in January 2013, Hadia Pendleton was tragically shot and killed at age 15, and on June 4th, 2021, to recognize her 24th birthday, people across the United States will recognize National Gun Violence Awareness Day and wear orange in tribute to Hadia Pendleton and other victims of gun violence and the loved ones of those victims. Whereas the idea was inspired by a group of Hadia's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange. They chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods, and orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. And whereas anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on June 4th, the first Friday in June of 2021, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And whereas by wearing orange on June 4th, 2021, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Michael Soriano of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, declare the first Friday in June, June 4th, 2021, to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And I encourage all citizens to support the efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives. I'd like to call up the members present from Moms Demand Action. Well, he's a press guy. He should be good. How about right here? How about right here? Come on around. These chairs.
Gotta go, man.
Yeah.
Gonna lock on my
They
back.
got you.
The chair's gonna lock on my back for about an hour. Took a bunch. I gotta
Right,
go.
hold on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
They bring the kid.
Okay, good.
Is that it?
Mr. Council President, that concludes my report. Thank you for your time.
Mayor. Thank you. Township Council, Mrs. Granier, you have something?
Yes, please. At a recent council meeting, the $5 million special emergency resolution was tabled over concerns that the council didn't have sufficient information to make a decision on borrowing the funds and whether the $5 million could be used as revenue in the 2021 budget. In May, the state confirmed emergency funds could not be used as revenue. The $5 million was included in the budget the mayor introduced at the April 6th council meeting and had to be deducted from the revenue summary. Also, we learned the Division of Local Government Services didn't approve the town's 2020 application for special emergency funds because of non-compliance with division requirements. After recent discussions with the division, the town reached agreement allowing it to borrow funds for COVID expenses, but with different conditions than applied it if the application was accepted by the division in 2020. BA Barr and CFO Uribe, advised the Finance Committee last Tuesday that the town will reduce the special emergency funds resolution from $5 million to $2.3 million. The $2.3 million, together with the federal rescue funds, covers COVID expenses the town incurred and provides the necessary cash flow relief it needs. It's the council's understanding there is between a $2 million to $2.8 million budget deficit that the administration will have to address before presenting the mayor's budget to the council. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. I have a couple of, anybody else from the council? I have a couple of items. First of all, at the Memorial Day ceremony, we owe an apology to Reverend Bragg. He flubbed his closing prayer, and he said, "Oh, I messed up." He said, "Let me do it again." Well, he would have expected, and I would have expected that they would edit that out, just when he did it correctly. They didn't edit it out. So I'm sure he's embarrassed. I feel bad for him, but his flub was in there. Also, I introduced Council Vice President Graniani there. She's the only other elected official there besides the mayor and myself, but that was omitted from the final version of the ceremony, which I didn't think was right either. The other thing we were amiss in is we should have announced, we had a live stream that was only a portion of the ceremony. We should have announced there, either the mayor or myself should have announced that the full version will be played back later. By the way, I never saw it on Channel 21. I don't think they ever played it. And it was never forwarded to Focus, so we couldn't play it either. We found it on YouTube. was the only place I could find our full version of the ceremony. That's all I have for Township Council. Township Attorney?
Wait, Mr. Council President, just
Yes.
if I may. This year and last year has been extremely difficult. I'm glad we were able to do something to recognize Memorial Day. It is unfortunate it didn't come off as perfectly as we wanted it to. I know you and I share in that, and I know you're committed, and I'm committed that next year in 2022, we will do it right, and we will do it proper. And we will have a parade, we will have our ceremony, we will honor our veterans in person. A lot of them were a little hesitant even still with what's been going on lately to show up in person, but I know you join me in that, and the council as well. And I invite everyone, hold on, wait till 2022, we'll be able to do this properly. But for now, we have July 4th coming, where we can honor them as well, and that will be done proper.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Council President.
Township Attorney?
Thank you, Council President. I have no report this evening.
Okay. Business Administrator?
Yes, Council President, I'd like to defer my report, which will be the presentation of Susan Favate on the cannabis ordinance for later. That's scheduled for my portion. She has a conflict and should be back here within 45 minutes. In fact, she's on another Zoom call in my office at this time.
Okay, so when she gets back, we'll stop what we're doing and
Yes, sir. If you
let her
could do
make
that,
her
that'd be fine.
presentation. Fine. Township Clerk?
Yes, just one quick announcement. The primary election is coming up on June 8th. Just wanted to remind everyone out there that polls open at 6 a.m. and they close at 8 p.m. We have 18 polling locations across the town, but more importantly, District 1, 4, and 39, they were previously in Temple Adeth Shalom. They have been moved, those three districts, to Brookline Middle School, as the Temple didn't want to participate this year due to the COVID. They weren't comfortable, and they'll probably be back next year. We thank them for all the assistance they've provided, and we appreciate that. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Township officers, committees, reports, any reports? Okay, move to the engineering report.
Okay, Green Bank Road Safety and Improvements Project. The project is complete except for the guide rail replacement. Coordination with the underground utility company is ongoing, and the new guide rail will be installed once underground utilities are moved. No council action required. Veterans Park Culvert Replacement Project. The Veterans Park Culvert Replacement Project is substantially complete. Punch list items and minor cleanup work still remains, but the park is open and accessible. No council action required. Mount Tabor Street Improvements, Phase 5. Work continues on the Mount Tabor Street Improvements, Phase 5 project. We anticipate the project will be substantially complete by the middle of June. No council action required. Mount Tabor Street Improvements, Phase 6. The Mount Tabor Street Improvements, Phase 6 project is under construction and will continue through September. No council action required. 2021 road resurfacing / curb and sidewalk program. The annual road resurfacing / curb and sidewalk project was awarded, and the construction schedule is being prepared. Construction activities are planned to begin in late June and will continue through the beginning of October. No council action required. Various culvert repair project. The repair of 7 bridges project was bid in March, and the pre-construction meeting was held. Construction activities are scheduled to begin in July and will continue through the beginning of November. No council action required. Edwards Road Improvement Project. The pre-construction meeting for the Edwards Improvement Project is scheduled for the beginning of June. Construction work is planned to begin in mid to late June and will continue through the end of October. No council action required. Pudding Stone Heights Road Improvement Project. Phase 1, the first phase of the Pudding Stone Heights Improvement Project, is out to bid. This project is for the reconstruction of the roads in this development, including drainage improvements, construction of curbs, and the installation of a sanitary sewer system. Construction work is planned to begin in July and will continue through the end of the year. No council action required. Community Rating System CRS program. We continue to work with our consultant and the NJDEP to get back into the CRS program. This program provides discounts on flood insurance policies based on the level of activities in which the township participates. The work will continue through at least the end of the year, no council action required. Performance bond release, Parsippany Hanover Realty LLC, Capitol Grill, Block 202, Lot 6.04. The developer completed all work for the off-site sanitary sewer improvements associated with the development of the reference site. Site inspections indicate that the sanitary sewer work has been constructed in accordance with the approved plans and was approved and accepted by this office and the sewer utility. This office has no objection to the release of performance security bond number 107119766. A resolution will need to be adopted by the Township Council.
Thank you. Bids taken, 4/22/21, Craftsman Farms, White Cottage Phase 1 rehabilitation. Item 2, May 5th, 21, supplying various materials for various township departments. May 13th, 2021, a lease of public property. May 19th, 21, construction of peracetic acid storage tank and metering station. Bids to be taken. 6/9/21, Puddingstone Heights Road Reconstruction Program, Phase 1. 6/10/21, various parks court resurfacing renovation projects for Parsippany Parks Department. It's a rebid. Item C, quotations, proposals, and qualifications. Item 1, 5/19/21, fireworks display services. 5/28/21, operation of catering, banquet, restaurant, and tea house facilities, and provision of related services at the Knoll Country Club. Any comments from anyone? Okay. All right, well, we have a public hearing for the Puddingstone Park project. I'll entertain a motion to open this hearing.
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Okay, the floor is open, but only for the Puddingstone Park project, nothing else.
If anyone wishes to come forward on this project, come forward, state your name and address, and sign in. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I have a few questions. Park grant, now, how come we're not having a presentation on this like we would like Craftsman's Farms, for example? And will this park, does this park have anything to do with the sewerage installation? Will there be a bathroom there? And how will this park look? Will it have a lawn? Will it need, how often will they mow it? Hopefully they won't use pesticides or herbicides. And will dogs be allowed? And just in general, what's going on up there with this park? Because the park is a kind of ambiguous, passive recreation, a ballpark. How many trees are going to be taken down to make this park? Where exactly is the block lot? And why are we not having a presentation?
Okay, are you done?
Yes.
Mr. Carr, would you answer that, please?
Sure, Nick, you beat me to before I could speak. So we're not, I think your confusion, or perhaps some of our confusion, is the name of the grant. It's called the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection Urban Parks Grant Program. And that's the name of so that's the term for the grant. We're not fixing a park or cutting down trees or putting in bathrooms or doing anything like that. There are tennis courts up at Puddingstone, and we're applying to the state of New Jersey to assist us in paying for that renovation. There are 2 clay courts up there right now if, as we all know, we're going to take those clay courts and make one of them asphalt and turn the other one into a basketball court at a cost of about $80,000 to $100,000. It's a matching grant. We're asking the state to split the bill. That's the short answer to that.
Yeah, because the key word was development.
That's the name of the term. That's the, yes,
Mm.
correct. So for park developments, there's about a 10 or 12 page blurb on this on the state's website. This is just all that is. But you have to have the public hearing requires this language in the notice for the public hearing to discuss what we're doing. And what we're doing is we're fixing the tennis courts at Puddingstone. Fixing one tennis court, making the other one a basketball court. That's what our application to the state under
So
this
the
program is.
bottom line is, this is a grant application, and as a part of the application, they require that we have a public hearing as a part of the grant application. So this is the public hearing for that grant application.
All right.
Yeah, there's no trees going down, there's no bathrooms, none of the things you had concern with are not part of this. This is about fixing the tennis courts.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Seeing no one else come forward, I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion.
Motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes,
Floor is closed.
thank you. Now I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing to the public on any topic.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Floor is open on any matter.
Okay, the floor is open to the public on any matter whatsoever. You have 5 minutes. Come forward, state your name and address, and sign in.
You want me to keep the time? Sure.
Do I have to state my name and address?
Please.
Amanda Terpstra, 135 Minnehaha Boulevard in Lake Hiawatha. Good evening, everyone. As stated, my name is Amanda Terpstra. I am the co-founder of Best Buds. We are a certified women-owned business dedicated to educating consumers on the power of cannabis. We currently provide hand-selected premium quality hemp CBD products, and we will be applying for a retail marijuana dispensary permit in the state of New Jersey. As an entrepreneur and advocate within the cannabis industry, I'm here to support the marijuana industry operating within the Township of Parsippany. First, I'd like to address that since the last town decision to opt out in 2018 medicinally, there's more readily available research into the industry and its effects within communities. There's been much more research done within the medicinal value of cannabis and why it's been legalized. And there's also significant financial impact in the way the cannabis industry can assist in towns. An important aspect I'd like to highlight is how the marijuana industry has taken a significant stance on social equity and giving minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses the opportunity to enter the industry. This is by reducing barriers of entry. One opportunity is applying for a micro license, which involves a specific regulation that you must live in the town or in a surrounding town of where your business will operate. And by eliminating the opportunity to operate a marijuana business within Parsippany, the town is simply recreating this barrier of entry for small business applicants such as myself, Best Buds. I'm also a resident of Parsippany, and I'd like to highlight that the municipality can tax an additional 2% on gross receipts of the business for cultivation, manufacturing, and retail licenses, and up to 1% on a wholesale business license. There are no tax on delivery or distribution businesses for the state. As an experienced professional in this emerging industry, I'd like to advocate for opting in for the town and allowing this industry to create business opportunity for people, as well as additional needed revenue for the town. I'd also like to note that regardless of our stance to opt in or opt out for this business opportunity, you still cannot deny residents from possessing, consuming, or receiving deliveries of cannabis to the residents, so this will be in our communities whether we decide to allow this business or not. I'd also like to highlight that Parsippany voted 63% in favor of legalizing cannabis, and I'd like to table this ordinance again and give the town the opportunity to create an open discussion with the public to opt in or opt out through a public forum and allow the input from the residents. This will also create a more open dialogue to allow the opportunity for further education and understanding of the industry within our communities and how we can benefit from it. I'd also like to offer Best Buds, myself and my team, as a resource for the town and the community regarding all things cannabis, and we are open to further discussing this and the how and why of why this industry could be beneficial for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think she'll be happy.
Anyone else wish to speak? Yes.
It's on me.
Regarding cannabis, my name is Bob Venezia, 102 Brooklawn Drive. Regarding the cannabis, my position is the same as it was at the last meeting. You want to allow, there's 6 classes of businesses. I don't care if you allow 5 of them, but do not allow retail, please. I came here tonight to ask questions about the budget, but I guess it's still not appropriate because we don't have one yet.
Correct.
And
Correct.
we got to find out, but it's definite that this $5 million special appropriation is now out, and it's replaced by a 2.3. So I'll come back when we have a budget.
Thank you.
Can I respond to Bob?
Sure.
Of course.
Hey, Bob, I just want to ask you a question. It was on March 3rd where you came to the council meeting and you basically requested nothing more than a 2%, this is March 3rd of 2020, nothing more than a 2% tax increase. Is that correct? I have your email.
Have me on record?
I have you on email.
I don't remember what I said.
Okay.
March 3rd.
I'll just put it to you this way. I heard you.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
Very briefly on the marijuana. If the people want it, and Parsippany has all this space, and it's ridiculous, and the Parsippany's whole thing has been tax ratables, and where has tax ratables gotten Parsippany? But where was all this disturbance in our minds about the airport liquor bottles and the vape products? Now, the outcome many times is more important than the intention, but the intention for those 2 products was nothing good for anyone, for personal health, well-being, or the environment. So I just find it absurd that we're getting this upset about a opportunity in a land of opportunity for something that has been democratically okayed. I was a little disturbed at the last meeting by a statement that it was after, it had to do with the budget, and it was after 3 years, the mayor owns it. Now, to me, that's absurd. As if there is, in time and space, there is not a continuum. And this is quoted from science. Time and space. As far as we know, there are no missing points in space or instants in time, and both can be subdivided without any apparent limit in time or duration. In a continuum, only extremes count. So time is not a ribbon. You don't cut it and pretend it begins and ends. And the iteration of this was that we were led to believe, or not told honestly, that we could use sewer and water forever to patch up tax. You wouldn't have to raise taxes, or you wouldn't have to raise them that much. Taxes go up all the time, not from the municipality, from the Board of Education. I got my senior tax freeze, I just got back $328. Not because of the municipality, it might have been a little bit, but because of the Board of Education. And I'll say it again, Iancucci, Soriano and them, they worked out a formula, cumulative effect, everyone would pay a homeowner an average of $4.32, and it would fit, that cumulative effect would have patched up all our problems, and our problems now are water and sewer. Our infrastructure's deteriorated, and the money kept in trust for that purpose was used to smoke and mirrors. So you have to stay within the laws of nature and physics. And you can't say that the mayor, who, no matter who he is, he bought it after 3 years. No, he didn't. He's part of the continuum and has to live with the legacy of whatever he's stuck with, the predicament. So I just found that not real, not outside the laws of nature or physics, if you want to say that, the political jargon. And I think we can do better than that. I noticed lately in Lake Hiawatha, we got a lot of these hot rodders roaming around with the room, you know, and everything, and no person shall allow excessive or unusual noise, cut out or bypass. The police ordinance is 39-3-70. We got a lot of these guys now that are on certain days, certain times, they have these loud vehicles. It's another form of disrespect toward each other. And I think that the police should spend a little time up there, and when these hot rodders come around,
Got
pull
30
them
seconds,
over,
Nick.
blah, 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 and, you know, see if they can tone down the noise a little bit. So, all right, I'll leave it at that. 20 seconds.
20 seconds, that was good.
Hey, thank you, Nick.
You get a credit.
Anyone else?
Give you a credit for next time, Nick.
Use it or lose it. Good evening, Councilman, Council President, Council Mayor.
Good evening.
With regards to the $2.3 million, I asked this question before when it was $5 million. What is the payback for the $2.3 million that you're gonna borrow? Now, is that $2.3 million gonna balance your budget to give you the 2%? What's the tax increase still gonna be at $2.3 million? Is that money for this year, or is it for last year's budget?
The 2.3 million,
Oh, is that the last question?
that's your last question?
Well, I'll let you answer me, then I get what,
We'd like-
7 minutes?
Our process has been, let you finish your questions.
Okay, so now, I just heard the mayor say to Mr. Venezia, I heard you loud and clear on the 2%, so explain to me what that means. Is the budget gonna be 2% this year?
Is that your?
Is the budget, well, yeah, it is my,
You're done here.
is that true, because you said, I heard you loud and clear, so that would assume, I can only assume that you mean 2% increase this year. So now you're gonna borrow $2.3 million. Where's that money gonna come from next year? Where are you gonna come up with another $2.3 million?
And one thing I like to talk about is the sewer treatment plant, utility. I keep hearing it's dilapidated. That's bull. When I became the mayor in 2010, there was $1 million in surplus in the sewer treatment utility. I left it with almost $10 million. Okay? We refurbished that, and I hear that I never increased the sewer rate. Well, I did and the water, I did in 2010. It was increased. So my question is the 2%, and my question is the fact is, where are you gonna come up with the money next year for the $2.3 million? So, go ahead, I'll let you go.
Are you done?
I am done, sir.
You can go first, Michael.
Well, tonight, if we vote on the 2.3 million, it's gonna be on the condition that the township pays back that 2.3 million with the pandemic recovery money that we will receive in 2022 to pay the full amount, so it will not burden the taxpayers at all. Your turn.
Yes, sir. In regards to the $2.3 million, which is being introduced as an ordinance tonight, that is to cover a deficit from 2020. The shortfall of revenues combined with the deficit that stems from transactions of 2020, the purpose of the $2.3 million is to cover that deficit. Related to the second assertion that you made about the surplus funds, I may say that that is inaccurate. And of course, I don't want to get into political turf, but I'm talking about the numbers. I'm talking about the finances of the city. Essentially, there's a structural imbalance in the budget which stems from 2011. It picked up speed around 2015, and the reasoning, the cost of that imbalance was the use of surplus funds from the utilities to balance the main budget. So essentially, taxes were not raised to the level that they should be raised in order to cover that shortfall, which as a ripple effect ended up as a deficit in 2020. The purpose of the $2.3 million, it is only to cover the deficit.
Okay, now, I heard you loud and clear in the surplus. But when you talk about using surplus in the sewer utility, if you look at the budget, page 34, and you look at the audit books, where was the surplus increased? Into the current fund or into the operating portion of the utility?
Surplus funds were used in both sides. You need to use a portion of that to cover the revenues and balance the budget of the utilities. The problem was that too much of surplus funds was being yanked from the utilities to be used in the main budget. And that's what caused essentially a deficit not only in the main budget, but also caused the utilities to run out of surplus funds.
No, I think what cost the utility to run out of surplus was you increased it by almost $2.6 million in 2 years into the operating portion of the utility itself. The prior 2 years before that, only 1.6 million was used. Then, that was more than doubled into the utility.
7 figures, digits.
No, it's not, well, my point is, it's not the money that was used in the current fund. It's the money that was used into the actual fund. Did you pay as you go? Did you capitalize things?
We're mixing separate subjects here, and I'm sorry to call it that way. You cannot mix capital with operating expenses from the main budget. Essentially, surplus funds from the utilities, when they picked up speed and started being anticipated in the 7-digit figures, was in 2015. Before, the amounts were reasonable. So they don't cause much of an issue to the utilities, they don't cause much of an issue to the main budget. But as soon as the gap of the main budget became wider and it was being covered by surplus funds from the utilities, it caused an imbalance, the main budget.
I know exactly why it was being used. That's not my point.
Okay, Mr. Barberio?
Yeah, no, we can debate this all day,
Yeah,
and I
put
will
this
be
on the
doing
side. We
that.
can't make this a debate.
But anyway, thank you for your time, and I'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you, sir.
That will be you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Who?
Close the mayor.
You're gonna close the public first?
I was waiting for the public to see if anybody else wanted to speak. Seeing no one else come forward, I'll entertain a motion to close the public.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes,
Floor is closed.
okay.
Ordinance 2021,
So before you, I'm sorry to cut you off, Councilmember Grignani. This is the ordinance for the $5 million, so to save you some reading, I think we either can do as the business administrator had recommended, which is a motion to vacate, you can just let it die, or you can do another motion to table. That is your call.
We were about to do that.
Okay, I just didn't want Councilmember Grignani to do all that reading for nothing, so.
thank you.
I had already coached her.
Oh, okay, sorry, Council President, I apologize.
All right.
Pay attention down there.
We are going to move, I make a motion to move to vacate ordinance 2021:09.
Second, Peterson.
So a motion to vacate by Ms. Grignani, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy,
Yes.
Ms. Grignani,
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes,
Motion passes.
okay, now, the administration wants the introduction of this other ordinance, the 2.3 million on tonight? You want to vote on it tonight? Or does it not make any difference?
So, if you want, so I would ask if the council is ready to pass or to introduce this ordinance for the 2.3, to do it tonight. If all it's going to do, Council President and the members of the council, is delay the introduction of the budget, or our possible introduction of the budget. We can't have the introduction of the budget until this 2.3 has been introduced and passed by the council. I mean, that's the math of the conversation. So if you do it on the 15th, we just kick it back another 2 weeks down the road for the,
All right, we'll introduce it tonight.
Thank you, sir. And the two resolutions also for tonight, as requested by DCA. So as we were talking previous for the council, who didn't hear the little sidebar we were having, in the fall, we had a conversation. We followed what we were told by DCA. We passed a resolution in December. The 15th of December was the adoption of that resolution. DCA has decided they didn't like that, and they want these other resolutions. Fine, have two more resolutions. You know, paper we've got. If they had asked us to do this in December, we'd have done it just like this in December, but, you know, for $2.3 million, wanted I'll do a little dance, but not here.
Okay, let me just make
Well,
my...
just let me, can I just mention that it actually is different. You didn't comply, this was in compliance with what was required. So you went,
When we were told, and what we were, so that's where we have a fundamental difference of opinion between
the
myself and the auditor. We follow the local finance letter to the record, to the letter. Nowhere in that finance letter given in October did it talk about resolutions. Because normally when they have these local finance notices that come out of DCA, they say, in order to get your special appropriations for money for Sandy, you need to pass the following resolution, and they'll give it to you. And that was nowhere there, so we didn't have one until our conversation at your request, Councilwoman, where you said, get a hold of DCA, and that's when they told us they want this in this form, and that's why you see it there.
well, that was the outcome of our finance committee meeting.
Correct.
But what happened was the Department of Local Government Services guidelines weren't followed. So there was non-compliance. The reason they didn't approve it was for non-compliance.
I will disagree.
Well,
Because the resolution you passed had everything in there they
I
wanted.
think, though, that we agreed on that at the Finance Committee meeting, and the Division of Local Government Services
Correct.
corrected that and said that we didn't comply with the guidelines.
We will agree to disagree in that matter.
Well, it did create a $1.8 million operating deficit at the beginning of the year.
Correct.
Right.
But again, like I said, we will agree to disagree.
Well, you're disagreeing really with the state, so.
I do that a lot.
Well, that
I do,
doesn't
20
mean-
years I've been doing that.
That doesn't necessarily mean you're right, but go ahead.
Or it doesn't make them right,
mean the state is right either.
but that's okay. We
Yeah,
need
but-
to move on, and we
But
need
the
to pass the
state
budget, or
is
we're
the
gonna
one
be in
that
trouble.
sets the guidelines,
Exactly.
so you can't disagree with the state, but let's
If I
move
can
on.
Okay,
interject,
for the public's information, we have an ordinance that we're going to introduce tonight and vote on, and two resolutions that are a part of that ordinance that the DCA requires. That's the Division of Community Affairs, if you don't know the acronym.
Mr. Council President, I believe the CFO wanted to make a point.
Okay.
Maybe you go ahead. Go ahead.
Just very brief. Thank you, Mayor. All I wanted to say is that the division provided extensive guidance, but that guidance was not entirely accurate, was inadequate. We followed to the T the local finance notice, which was like 10 pages, 10, 11 pages, something. The guidance provided there is not what they explain afterwards.
Oh, Janice. You're gonna do the whole thing.
Oh, I'm gonna do what?
Well, Council
The
President?
ordinance and the resolution.
The ordinance?
If I may, just interject for 1 second with regard to the ordinance and two resolutions, because, of the discussions we've had during the week, I have placed it on the agenda with the intent of no action. But I do have a backup here with action, but I have the body in front of me, so I ask if I may be the one to read the ordinance and the two resolutions just this time, only because I have the body in front of me. Is that okay?
Is there a difference in the wording that we have?
Well, it's just the wording, but then you have the whole body. They can, whoever wants it, they can have the body as well.
I'm good with it.
All right, you can read it.
Okay, thank you. Ordinance 2021:12, ordinance authorizing a special emergency appropriation in the amount of not to exceed 2.3 million or such other lesser amount as certified by the Director of the Division of Local Government Services for the purposes set forth in NJSA 48:4-53L and/or NJSA 48:4-53M in and by the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills in the County of Morris, New Jersey. Be it resolved that the above ordinance be introduced, read by title, and passed on first reading at a meeting of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills held on June 1st, 2021, and that said ordinance be further considered for second reading and final passage at a meeting to be held on June 15th, 2021 at 7 p.m. prevailing time or soon thereafter as the matter may be reached. At the municipal building in said township, in which time all persons interested shall be given an opportunity to be heard concerning said ordinance. Be it further resolved that the clerks be authorized and directed to advertise said ordinance with the notice of introduction thereof being published in the official newspaper according to law. Motion to approve the above resolution for ordinance 2021:12.
Is there a
Motion.
motion? Yep, Evelyn. Second?
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Peterson, seconded by Mr. Carriffy. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy.
I'm going to vote yes, and I'm just going to reiterate what Mr. DePiero said earlier about that this money, the money that we're going to receive through COVID relief in 2022 be used to pay this back. So my vote is in full, my vote is yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes, I feel the same way that Councilman DePiero and Councilman Carriffy. When we receive the 2.7, let's pay our 2.3 back, totally. Thank you.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
And Mr. DePiero?
And since they've already given my statement, I'll say yes.
Motion passes. Moving on to the two resolutions. You have the first resolution authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to submit an application to the Director of Division of Local Government Services for approval of a special emergency in the amount of 2.3 million. May I please get a motion?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes,
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
And Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Motion passes. Second resolution authorizing the issuance of special emergency notes in an amount equal to the special emergency appropriation. Could I please have a motion?
Motion.
second, Grignani.
Motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes,
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you.
Town Clerk Floyd, Madam, may we please have a copy of that resolution that you just read?
10 cents per page. No, I'm just kidding, of course.
Okay. We'll pay it. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Favate never came back. We'll just keep moving on then.
Yes, sir. She'll be back. 10 minutes.
Well, the rest of them are not getting voted on tonight anyway.
Correct.
We have the introduction regarding fees for the wholesaler and distributor. And item 1 and item 2 all relate to the cannabis ordinance.
Council President, I think that the first amending and supplementing the Chapter 455 fees is for the tax collector to charge
For 1%.
No, that's to charge people who ask for duplicate copies
Oh,
of
okay.
the,
Correct.
tax records. So some of these guys keep losing it, so if you want additional copies or a second copy, that's the fee. That's
I see.
what this ordinance is for.
Okay,
The
thank you.
second ordinance, sir, is for the Chapter 77, the conditional use.
Okay, thank you. Looking down the resolutions are not up for vote tonight. Anybody have any questions or comments on the consent agenda resolutions? The applications for licenses, should these be done tonight?
No.
We have time? Okay. Then, item C, approval of payroll bills list. Janice?
Approval of payrolls and bills list. CFO Juan Uribe recommends authorization for payment, authorization of payment of the 6/25/21 regular payroll, estimated at $1,650,000. Payment of bills and voucher list is 6/1/21 through 6/3/21, estimated at $1,347,957.65. Motion to approve the authorization for payment.
Motion. Second.
We have Mr. Carriffy who made the motion and seconded. Can we get a second?
Yeah,
Second.
Mrs. McCarthy's
Oh,
motion.
yeah.
okay. Motion made by Ms. McCarthy, seconded by Mr. Carriffy. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well,
Wait a
Council
minute.
President, we still
Waiting
have,
for Susan to come back? Nice try.
No.
Can't get out that quick.
All right,
There's
5-minute
one.
recess? 10-minute
You can do that.
recess?
You can 5 minutes.
probably 10 minutes.
10-minute recess.
10-minute
Welcome if
recess.
you got 'em.
Okay.
Be a good time for a courtesy call, too.
Tell your mother.
For the bathroom.
Oops, sorry, Paul.
Knock 'em off.
I have to call the chair, I think, right?
Courtesy call means I have to go to the bathroom.
There's one Yankee fan. There's one Yankee fan.
Two?
2, 3, 4, we have a couple.
Rob nine.
I'm a suffering Met fan. So.
They're doing okay, though.
Yeah, they're doing
They're
it.
doing fine.
Actually, they're doing better than I thought.
Yes.
You know, maybe, just maybe.
Gotta stay healthy, right?
It could be just the next one in line, you know, when you think about it, you know, if you have a class full of time, you want to order one.
Weekend, Emily?
next one in line.
Lovely. Well, no,
I'm
miserable. The
like,
weather was absolutely miserable.
I was gonna question you about yours when I saw it earlier.
No.
Look, I laid on the
It's a very
couch,
gruesome process.
and
I
then,
walked
Monday we
into
spent
a room
time
with
with
800 guys.
So that
just
was
exactly
We hear
the
it's
same.
trouble.
Here.
And of course, you
Yeah,
just
here.
walk into
Our
the
son is
service
going to his
academy.
very
job
first
fair.
sleepaway camp.
Oh,
today.
really?
Everybody
Where's he
looks
headed?
exactly the same, because they all come from the
In the
service
Pocono
academy.
Mountains.
Okay.
And I
But
walked out of
that
that
has
and I went home
eaten
and
up
said,
the majority of our.
You're not gonna do that.
we need to
Summer
mix
because,
this up.
He's
Like
going
the
for
attack
3.5.
of the clone, people looking for.
I'm not sure it was the
every
right
one of them.
idea. He was going for 2 weeks last summer with the intention of
After that
going
day,
for the half
I've gone away from the regimental
So
ties.
he didn't go
I've
last year. They had
school
camp,
ties,
there were no
the rest
cases of COVID,
is
but we were
legend.
able to push our tuition. So we had a long conversation.
Well, you don't have to.
And I said, you can go for 2 weeks.
How did that go?
Well, I said, you can go for 2
privilege,
weeks,
sir.
or you can go for 3.5 weeks. If you come back for a week and a half, you're gonna watch me work on the dining room.
That's my dream.
That's my dream.
Versus, I mean, it's like, okay, they can do
Yeah,
whatever.
my best time was about 6 or 8 weeks
Oh, I'm
during
going for
COVID.
the
I was the first family.
You can't
Nobody's
call.
in the building
I'm
but
not
me on
gonna
the
pick you up.
second
He's like,
floor.
no, I know.
And
I
I'm
was like,
Three weeks, 3 weeks.
3 weeks is 3, like, we can't,
My orange
you made a
colors.
decision.
There's no early parole, right?
No. But it's the most incredible camp. We went for a tour a couple of weeks weeks ago.
Okay.
I literally
He's
like,
excited, right?
oh, he's like, beside himself in the website,
No,
they pull,
no,
I mean, there's probably
wait till it's your
50
parade.
2-minute videos.
Just
So
like
you
that
can just watch
commercial.
kids playing a game. And he's like,
She's in another
so he
meeting.
wants to be a vet, he's always.
Are we paying her?
We'll deduct that from the
Yeah.
break.
He has never deviated from what he's done.
And I'm not charging a rent for, I'm not charging a rent,
Thank you.
I'm not charging a rent for using my
But,
No, she's on a
so
total.
he
actually make-
sold
you
us
can actually
on
make
these camps.
We're gonna make
They
Don't
pay for this, and you charge
Yeah,
$50 to
So,
use your office.
when we had this on the agenda tonight, and
walk
question,
around like
last
so you
week,
can like walk it down.
so last week,
You can- And they give all the kids stethoscopes so you can like look at the heart rate.
I don't think so. I always make it
So cool, but it's most education anyone in this family.
And that's why, which is why I
Best thing
want
to
you
do
to
is
have
drag it up here,
one
throw it
microphone,
on the wall, make sure they
not
have
three.
it. Because next
Kind of
week,
like the New Jersey, New
15,
York,
too late to
Pennsylvania,
be
and
answering
Central.
something, because we got,
I've seen signs
for
Yeah.
August deadline out
It's a
there.
hike,
You know, I
it's
got
about 2.5 hours.
So,
But we have
and
picked
then
out where we
she
can
came back
It is.
a little while, so she goes, that's good, I can
I've
do that.
written, I'm in the
She starts
process of
preparing the
writing the
briefing,
letter, so
halfway
he
through
gets a
her
letter
PowerPoint
every
presentation,
day.
obviously the
I
light
don't know.
bulb went on,
Send
so
him
it's like,
care packages, so I'm coordinating with my family
so that's why I
members
said,
to
come
send
here,
It's not
we'll wait,
all
something I can
the
speak
goldfish
eloquently.
that we're done, at 10 minutes to,
Yeah.
And
holy
the
tamales.
kid to counselor ratio, there's 10
You
kids
can
to 3
speak
counselors.
eloquently
And they're
about
never
anything you
without.
want.
Yeah, I'll tell you
And
one
there-
thing though.
2 of those counselors will be counselors who have been at the camp within the last 5 years.
I'm certainly against hate.
The sealing the deal was if the first time
Mayor, we
campers
oughta
don't make it through, you get
complain
money back
about
prorated for the days they.
Channel 21 did not cover our
Like,
ceremony.
all right, this family.
We
they're,
kept it
like,
on for 2
confident
hours,
enough
my
in their
wife has
ability
had
to
it
do
on,
homesickness, but
and they had garbage on there.
I'm being
He'll be
facetious,
homesick
but
for
I'm
like
saying
5
I'm a
minutes every
little,
night, and then he'll be like,
We paid for that.
yelled about that.
Yeah.
plenty of things to keep them
And
off the home.
this is
Plenty of
our
things.
shared
I mean,
services, and I don't,
anything you
listen,
think-
I had no editing on it. I don't know why he edited it.
He wants to be a vet, huh?
Wants to be a vet,
but
but the
the-
struggle
but
we
the
have is that he
reverend, you know,
doesn't love
But
school.
both things.
He had a very,
Number one, you were there.
did not have a
You were
competent,
being acknowledged by the MC. I
kindergarten
don't understand why that was cut out. Second, yeah, the
and
brag
second grade,
thing,
or
I
first
guess
grade was
it's sort of
interrupted by.
He had to be
Second
embarrassed.
grade has been COVID.
Brother Bragg is
It's
such,
like the
he
perfect
is,
candidate for the Waldorf.
he is the
He's
sweetest soul.
like,
He really
if he could
is.
just be
He's so
self-directed
dedicated.
and
He's
design
given so
science
much.
projects, he would just be the happiest kid. He doesn't.
So that's why I offered a public apology.
You know, it's appropriate. It's appropriate.
And we just have conversation. Like I taught second grade.
Next
I
year,
know.
let's just do this
But
one.
it's also like part of the school's learning how
And
to
yes.
learn.
It will be
I
done.
fully intend
And how to deal with that.
Right.
It will be done.
Yes.
So there's a lot of.
It would be good to have them.
You know, my mother was a first grade teacher for like 25 years.
Oh,
Hopefully
yeah.
accommodate a little bit on Fenwick
So
Road.
she said, that's a typical little boy.
At the event.
Good. I
You
mean,
know, she would always say that.
I hope there's a shift because I love and he loves to learn. And
Kids
it's
with
such
the
a shame
children
that
weren't
somebody's
ready
so
for
bright and so in love
My
with
nephew was
learning.
like
I just don't want him to like.
fourth grade,
I
it seemed
see.
to all go away.
A lot of
Oh,
things.
okay, so there's hope.
Yeah.
I'm thinking when they get into more
Was
like,
AL or
he's
VFW?
so,
I don't want to
he has no idea what Fortnite is. He has no, he's got YouTube Kids, he can watch anything he wants. And I
Okay.
peek over and he's watching like shows about animals.
We'll get back to you on which one it was.
And I'm like, does that freak you
Well,
out?
But I get it.
both
Well,
Things we didn't have a.
of those groups were upset
Yeah, he wants
because
to like,
we had
gets into space.
a rally on
It's all about, yeah. I
46
said, you
for
know, you
the
could be an engineer, you could design the
Palestinians.
machines that vets use. And he was like, I want
Not
you
that they have
to
any
work
problem
right
with the
him. But he's also like
Palestinians,
fascinated by
but
space.
if they could have a public
But-
rally, why couldn't we have a public ceremony for the veterans?
Here's the difference.
You wanna be out of
Here's
here?
the
But that's
By the time the
I'm telling you.
I could
I didn't want to
understand
say
that.
anything,
Wanting to
to
do
sit
the
around
false
and wait?
equivalency. I
Yeah,
had nothing to
but exactly.
yeah, I know.
It's like watching paint job.
They did their own thing.
I'll tell you a funny story.
There was three
A good
17-year-old
friend of mine's
girls that
younger
got together.
brother wanted to be a
Yeah,
vet.
they just said if they could be in public like that, why couldn't the veterans be in public like that?
Kid was a very good student. did very well.
That was the feeling of some of them, both the VFW and the American
He
Legion.
did not get in.
Although the one you're thinking of is Bruce
And
Michaels,
I saw
and that's
his
American
symptoms.
Legion.
He graduated top of his class. He went to Scranton, double major, biology and chemistry.
Yeah.
You know? And he said, yeah, you know what the
At least we'll
problem
be
is?
able to
He
get
said there were
some
so
normalcy
few
for July
seats in
4th.
vet school.
Yeah, there's like 8 schools in the whole
Yeah, that's what I
country.
was gonna say. So he
You know,
Yeah,
he
so
went
you
on,
have
he
a
did some
company?
advanced graduate work, he worked in the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay.
For a couple of
What is the
years.
name? What?
And
What's the-
basically did.
Onyx. That's
Yeah.
that's the one that took
Oh,
over
wait.
Matt Cali.
And then
Oh,
three
okay,
years in,
okay.
we went to medical.
And we're not gonna give him that property on 1633
He's a medical
Littleton.
doctor, and he said to me, you know, I ran into him recently,
They better not come back and say they wanna build something.
he said to me, not unusual.
Interesting.
We're not allowing
James
it. They can't.
loves
That's part of flood mitigation.
He
We
loves
have
other kids.
we have a deed restriction on
He
it.
could be a pediatrician. So Rutgers
but they
has
can still-
That's the one that's in the front.
Yeah.
Originally, we wanted to
animal
build a
science
park on
program
it.
that's
We wanted
a
a park.
It's all of
We-
the vet program. So
Oh, is that
Yeah.
so, really?
I've done a little bit of research. I mean, it's only 10
Are they
years and I'm a
picking up all
planner,
of the
so you know, I like,
costs,
and I
Wait,
work in
what's
Montclair,
Yeah.
so I thought if I work in
12.75.
Montclair long enough, he can go there
Wait.
tuition free.
Go ahead.
Let me answer his question, I'll get Loretta's.
I was an adjunct.
Please.
That's a familiar name.
Yeah, I just finished my last class, and I'm not going to cutting back on my.
Dr. Medina?
So back when I
can't-
needed
I
3
can
jobs, I
hear
had 3 jobs. Now I have 2 jobs. Soon I will have 1 job because this is sunset.
No, I don't know him,
But
yeah.
I've learned
No.
that
That's a
Rutgers
surprise to us.
program has high school programs. So to get
Both
into
sides of the, both sides of
Yeah,
the
both
street.
sides.
The Colony Building,
programs, and then you're more likely to be accepted. And then they feed into that school, so they have like an 80% placement rate. They're undergraduates.
I've never-
That's gone.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've never met him.
God's green earth, we're gonna pay for all of this. We just watched a Netflix documentary about.
If you talk to him, you can tell him, we're not interested.
And I just paid off my student.
If you talk to him, you can tell him, we're not interested in any more apartments.
Thank you, $50,000.
Yeah, and gas stations.
Culinary school that I
No
went
gas
to
stations next to
30
people's houses.
I had a
I think he's expressed that he's interested in just making upgrading them into office space. Definitely the best thing to do.
The no more school for me. But
Oh, my God.
Where I had heard that the price of college increased exponentially right with loans. That's only true for public universities. Private university tuition has remained flat. And I found that just mind
Fred
blowing.
answered. Fred answered.
Because I'm such a.
I was worried about overtime.
There should
I
be
was
public
worried about
education.
And by the way, a private university,
They're going to be
there's a
taking,
lot more endowment.
they're taking care of all of it.
So on one hand, I'm like, you should go to Rutgers. On the other hand, I'm like, what are the other private feeder schools? But in 10 years.
Well, I saw the 75, but it didn't say fireworks.
Middle
That's why I
class
was
like
questioning.
boy who's good at math and science isn't going to necessarily be the kid getting the endowment money. So I think we have to be
Yeah, but with all the other.
strategic about our.
Yeah, for many years, we paid 20,000 a year for the fireworks.
Going to be competing.
Went up a little bit this year?
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
You know, I'm not doing any.
It's over 70,000.
I used to be on the interview committee.
Okay, yeah.
29? Okay.
And,
It used to be
you know,
20.
I went to law school in the evening, so I worked full time.
Yeah.
All right, and I didn't even borrow any money. I graduated in '92. I think I was probably the last cohort of people who could do that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when I was interviewing, I was interviewing.
To be able to do that.
You know, we hire really predominantly at top tier schools.
Yeah.
Sure.
If you're in a car, it's
There's all you can hear, is, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what's going on.
No, that's where.
Yeah, you want to see the Rockets red glare.
Just
That's it.
So now it's
First thing in
practicing
there.
family law in New
So we just
Jersey.
make a big mess of high school.
We were all sitting around the pool.
The Hills High School.
Yeah.
Question,
And then on social
what was, Westover asking
No
about
angel in personal finance.
the properties?
The millions,
The properties on 46, that's what brought up.
the Indian guy that bought up the properties on both
And
sides of
listen, you
40.
know,
Okay, he's
if
not
you don't,
doing
you know,
any,
we pay well.
not doing a
but we don't
Wawa,
pay what
he's
they
not
pay
doing
in
a
the city.
Chick-fil-A.
Okay?
What is he gonna
And
do?
you don't get a top.
He's talking about, and this is just out of the press, he hasn't talked to us yet, but in the press, he's saying he just wants to upgrade the office space.
And it's so sad because I think
Listen,
even
I know you
felt
have no
it.
appetite for apartments there, neither do I.
And I'm a teacher, I'm an educator.
Okay,
That's
and
what
what I really don't
love
have
it.
an appetite
But we
for
teach people how to go
is
to
a gas
school.
station.
And we teach people how
Not
to go
that
to
it's
school.
too close to
So
residence.
for someone like
That,
myself
and
who
if they put
graduates,
it, the gas
says, okay,
station in
well, I
the
want to
right
go more, get a
or
master's
style,
degree,
it's too
well, I
close
want to
to
go
a,
more. In the height of
to a
the
synagogue.
recession.
Yeah.
Today I
I don't want
felt
that.
but I was also like, I don't know what I want to do yet. I'll just go to
Mega
school.
school.
And that's
We're done.
Well, you know, that would take care of the budget deficit.
Get your tires.
I would love to see a White Castle go in there.
Oh,
Right next to the, I grew up at White Castle. I love those greasy square.
So you want the White Castle next door to a cigar store, and on the other side of the White Castle is a liquor store that sells premium scotch? Because then it's one-stop shopping for you.
There you go.
All right?
If you have the White Castle next to the retail cannabis, you could get your cannabis in the White Castle. It'd be the perfect stoner corner.
I have.
I'm gonna tell Dee you said that about White Castle. We'll get you in trouble.
She knows that.
I've been advocating to hire students out of vocational training.
That's a cholesterol delight.
On the cannabis.
Johnson and Wales.
My favorite thing is White
CIA,
Castle.
we said we're hiring
Really
students
so
from the
concise,
best. I'm like, we're gonna slice
informational,
you.
it was
So
concise,
crunchy.
it was.
Well, the little onions they chop in there, and there's pickles in there.
Oh, that they put in the burger themselves, but I mean the onion rings. You get fried onion rings?
Yeah.
Those are hard to resist. You don't even need to put ketchup on them. They're perfect, just like
I
that.
get those phone calls all the time. from the-
Hey, everyone, it's Susan Favate.
But,
Okay.
How was your meeting? Okay.
Maybe.
No, it's okay.
So a buddy of mine.
Yes.
He said,
Where's Janice?
Down the street.
Oh, the CIA?
I got a CIA.
Yeah,
We
that's
had
great,
one
right?
there. It was spectacular.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting back.
I don't know what Janice is.
Recruiting.
Old Jesuit Parsippany.
Go ahead, do you know how to use the PA system in the building on the phone?
Crazy.
Yeah.
Oh,
When we go
your
there.
page,
All right,
John.
our 10-minute recess was
We're on the record.
20 minutes, but that's all
It
right.
was over 10 minutes ago.
We're gonna start recruiting again in September.
I don't have that.
That's a must.
It's a bus. You're kidding, like these
Don't wanna
are
miss
kids,
that one.
yeah, these
Yeah,
are
at
kids
home.
who are gonna go work for days.
Is that the map that Scar is talking about?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
okay.
they're-
That's the one.
Yeah, there she
And
is.
yeah, you know, they still take hospitality.
Susan, I want you to know that, we've discussed your payment for this evening, and it has been slashed.
Am I getting done?
Yes, you're getting done.
Good point, good
Yes.
point. Fred's charging you to use his office.
Right,
He
exactly.
doesn't get many desserts.
And I
We-
guess you pay rent, right?
We gotta make up some budgetary, expenses. We need everything we can get.
Well, thank you all so much for being patient and accommodating. I have not often faced this predicament where I'm supposed to be in two places at the same time, but virtual helps, helps to do these things. So I'll get started. I think I heard some folks talking about cannabis earlier in the evening, so I'm sure there'll be interest here. We just wanted to kind of set the stage, give you a sense of what the Cannabis Working Group has been doing, talk a little bit about next steps. But for starters, we're going to give you an overview of the state legislation. I know the council is probably pretty familiar with it. The public may be less so, so we wanted to make sure everybody's starting from the same place. Give you a sense of the overall land use approach that the working group has been talking about. Get a little bit into the details of both the zoning side and the licensing side. That's sort of two sides of the regulation here. And then I think what everybody's really interested in is where, based on the approach that we've been talking about, where could these operations locate in Parsippany? And then lastly, we'll talk kind of about next steps and the timeline, which is actually very important, as Mr. Lott will tell you, I'm sure. So just to give you a sense of the legislation, I think as everybody is aware, back in February, Governor Murphy did sign into law, I believe a total of 3 acts related to cannabis, but the one we're really focused on here is the Cannabis Regulatory Enforcement Assistance and Marketplace Modernization Act. I think some folks are calling it CREMA. We'll just call it the Act for tonight. What it does, I think, as you're all aware, it legalizes the use and possession for recreational marijuana or cannabis for adults. It legalizes and regulates the cultivation, growing, manufacture, distribution, various business operations related to cannabis. And then it also establishes a regulatory authority, a state cannabis regulatory commission, the CRC, which has begun to meet to establish the regulations that will guide both medical cannabis, which has been legal in the state, as well as the recreational cannabis, which is now newly legal. Okay, and they will also be issuing the state licenses. So just the overview of the legislation, what it did, it established a total of 6 licenses for cannabis operations. There's a lot of words, I'm not going to read the words, but basically, Class 1 is the growing operations, the more sort of agricultural. Class 2 is manufacturing, Class 2 is wholesaling, 4 is distribution on sort of an industrial scale. Class 5 is one I think a lot of folks are very interested in, is the retail, the storefront operations. And then Class 6 is the delivery, basically the Uber of cannabis, which may be occurring throughout towns, across towns, et cetera. So those are the 6 define licenses for the range of potential cannabis operations that will be operating in the state. It's up to the communities whether they want any or all of those in their communities. And the discretion is given to the municipalities. However, there is a very tight timeline to do that. There's only 180 days from the passage of the act, which is August 22nd, which is fast approaching, for municipalities to act, to decide whether they want these operations in their community and how. If the municipality fails to act, there's a default provision which automatically is imposed on the municipality. And what that does is it permits all of the classes of cannabis operations, subject to particular zoning regulations, and those are that most of the classes, the sort of industrial type scale of cannabis, would be allowed in all industrial zones within the municipality. So if you do nothing, all of those types of cannabis establishments will be allowed in your industrial zones. Class 5, which is that storefront cannabis operation, would be allowed in all retail and commercial zones, so all business zones. So that is sort of the cost of doing nothing, that you have that default imposed upon you. And more importantly, it's imposed upon you for 5 years, where the municipality cannot take any action to regulate cannabis operations. And so people may come during that 5-year period. When the 5-year period is up, the municipality is authorized to regulate and even prohibit those types of operations. But essentially, if they come in that 5-year period, they're grandfathered. They would be legally non-conforming. So it is not really in a municipality's best interest not to act. It's worth thinking about, whether you want them and how and where. So that is kind of where we started from, understanding that that's the context that we have to work with. So we have been working together. Township did convene a cannabis working group consisting of the mayor, the business administrator, the council president, Councilwoman McCarthy, the township attorneys, and myself. We've been having a lot of phone calls. Never thought I would talk so much about cannabis, but it's quite interesting. And really the result of those conversations has been a consensus among this working group that the two classes that the township is interested in permitting, these two classes of cannabis operations, are classes 3, which is the wholesale, and then 4, distribution. All other classes, including retail, would not be allowed anywhere in the municipality, in Parsippany. And further, the working group felt that a maximum of just 2 licenses for each of those types of operations would be allowed, as a good place to start. And then there are provisions which we'll talk about that really support an overall land use approach to buffer those uses from incompatible uses, in particular residential, schools, governmental buildings, parks, etc., and to strictly control where they can locate in Parsippany. So to give you a sense of what those are, again, there are 2 sides to the regulation, and I've been working mostly on the zoning, and then Jim Lott's office has really been digging into the licensing. They're going to work hand in hand. But in terms of the zoning, where these 2 licenses, these 2 classes of licenses would be allowed would be in all of your SCD zones except for SCD 10, which is generally the Matt Cali campus around that area. So anywhere else SCD zones would be allowed, as well as the LIW, which are your light industrial zones. And I have a map, so I'll show you where those are, but generally the LIW zones are along Edwards and New Roads. Further, in addition to these zoning districts, the establishments would be required to have frontage on either an arterial or collector road, which we have from the state DOT, or a small select number of specified local roads where it makes sense. And again, you'll see that on the map too. And then the last piece is a minimum lot size, which would be either 3 lots or the minimum lot size of the zone, whichever is greater. So nothing under 3 acres for a minimum lot size. Okay. We also have some provisions which we think are important for this type of use, dealing with security and fencing, relaxing some of the township's fencing requirements so that they could have a fence in the front yard to help buffer and shield, protect the use and the security. We have some provisions for signage, setback requirements, not allowing the merchandise to be visible from any public right-of-way. Everything has to happen within the enclosed buildings, and really dealing with some of those sort of nuisance issues that this type of use might result in. And then we do require that they be licensed both by the state and Parsippany. So that's the zoning side. they will also have to meet a licensing requirement, again, both on the municipal side and the state side. So what is proposed is a new Chapter 77 in the Township Code, which would govern cannabis regulation and licensing. This would be done through the clerk's office. There would be an appeal mechanism to the business administrator. And importantly, they cannot seek an application for a license application until they have received zoning approval. They have to go to a board first. That's kind of their first stop. There'll be a provision for annual renewal of licenses and limitations, again, on just 2 licenses for each of those 2 classes, wholesale and distribution. Now, this part is important on the regulation side, the licensing side. These first few bullets sort of echo the drug-free schools, which I think most people are familiar with, and these are the buffering requirements that will be in place for these types of establishments. 1,000 feet from any school leased or owned property, 500 feet from public property, including parks, and then 500 feet from residential zone boundaries. Now, we did carve out a couple public properties, which you'll see on the map, and it's just a suggestion, but basically it's the sewer plant and the old landfill site. Both of those are kind of off Edwards Road. And the thinking there is that, they cannot be built on, they cannot be developed, any of those sites for cannabis. That's not the intent. But to require a buffer from those areas that are really not truly public, they're not getting visitation, particularly the landfill, it's not being, there's no impact to that site. And if you were to impose buffers on those areas, as you'll see in the map, it would basically preclude most of Edwards Road or most of New Road from potential cannabis operations. And the feeling of the working group was that that actually might make sense, that area of Parsippany, for those types of establishments. So no need to buffer them out. But again, I'll show you on the map, and you'll see that the licensing also echoes some of the zoning provisions, but gets a little bit more detailed on things like hours of operation, requiring provisions for storage, no consumption, no public consumption on the premises, a lot of security and reporting requirements in conjunction with the chief of police. So that's the kind of detail that the licensing gets into. And then this is something that I think Jim could probably speak to a little bit more knowledgeably, but one of the benefits of doing this for on the municipal side is the ability to establish a transfer tax of 1% on all the receipts of the wholesaling operation. Now, the distribution side is not actually permitted to have a tax by the state statute, so that's why there's no tax there, but on the wholesaling side, you could be getting 1% of all the receipts there. Okay, so now the kicker. What does this actually mean? And what you'll see on the map, which I hope it's easy to read, next meeting we can have a big blow up ready. Generally, with all of these provisions that we've talked about, there'll be 4 areas where cannabis operations could potentially locate. There's the Edwards and New Road corridor, which is primarily zoned light industrial. There's some offices there, but it's primarily light warehouses, already exists. Then there's an SED3 area, the very northern part of the township along the Boonton border, Fanny Road, Parsippany Boulevard, that area. There is a small SED zone area on Jefferson Road and Pomeroy Road, sort of adjacent to I-287. Again, has strong interstate access. And then lastly, there are portions of Morris Corporate Center that front on Interpace Parkway because it's a major roadway. That's what qualifies that. But most of the corporate center would not qualify if it's not fronting on that road. So those are the 4 main areas, which I know I'm going to go through this map because there's a lot going on in this map. But basically, let's see if I can get the pointer working. I cannot. Oh, there it goes. The light purple, anywhere you see sort of lavender, are those 4 areas that I was talking about. So that's where there's a potential. Anywhere where you see kind of a gray hatching, which you probably will be able to see better digitally later when we post this or allow it to be circulated, that is a buffer area. So a cannabis establishment would not be able to locate there. So as you can see, this is Janarone Park. There's a buffer here along the park. So there's a lot of areas here that would not be eligible. And anything that's in yellow is a residential zone. So there's a 500-foot buffer from all of that. And then anything that has sort of a blue circle around it, those are school properties, which are mostly in the residential zones anyway. So as you can see, it's a fairly tight area. And again, here, these orange areas along the eastern side of Parsippany, this is the sewage treatment plant. And then these two properties right here are landfill. So if you were to have a buffer from those, you would essentially knock out most of this purple area here as a potential for cannabis operations. We have no dog in that fight. We're happy to put the buffer in. If the council wants that, the thinking again was that it might limit the potential location, and it would be buffering something that probably isn't, very heavily visited by the public. So that is the map, and I'm happy to linger or go back to it if we have questions. But I just wanted to get a sense of the next steps and the timing, because again, that August 22nd deadline it's not budging. It's the state's deadline. So we've kind of worked back from there. We looked at all the meeting dates. We figured out what we have to do. So the proposal here is to have this new ordinance introduced for first reading on June 15th. It will be referred to the planning board on the 21st. Potential second reading and adoption July 6th. There's a grace period. You could wait till July 21st, but that's really kind of the last possible time that you could act without running into risk of that default provision being imposed on you August 22nd. So I know Jim could speak a little bit more about that if there are questions on the timing and kind of the process. But that was a very quick run through of cannabis. Happy to go back, answer questions.
Could you go back to the map, please? Yeah.
Yep.
The property by the sewer treatment plant, I supported removing those buffers so that area could be used.
Yep.
It's on New Road and it has direct access to 280 right there.
Yep.
They would not have to travel on any of our local roads at all.
Yeah, that was something we spent a lot of time talking about, is potential truck traffic. Trying to make sure that we were not impacting residential neighborhoods. We were trying to locate, near interstate exchanges, which is where most of your industrial zone land is, logically. So it makes sense.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
The first thing is I'd like to just state for the record how incredibly proud I am of the work that the Cannabis Working Group has done. I know that we didn't start from a place of curiosity, and I want it to be on the record that I'm incredibly thankful for the work that has been done, because I think that it's meaningful, and it's going to mean great things for the town. I have two practical questions, though.
Sure.
The first is, did I hear you right that there is an annual renewal for the licenses? Is that in line with how we do liquor licenses or other retail licenses?
So.
Is it all annual?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then the other question I have is, so of the 6 licenses, one of them, there's no tax benefit at all.
Right.
One of them, there's 1%, and then the others, there's 2% opportunity.
There are actually 2 licenses that are not eligible for tax.
Okay.
Distribution and retail delivery.
Okay.
Right, retail delivery, not retail sale, but the delivery, all right, no tax.
Right.
Okay.
There's only 1% by state statute available for the warehousing use. All the other classes of licenses are 2%.
So the one that we can gain the revenue on, which is the warehousing.
Correct.
Do we have any sense of what the demand is for someone looking just for that singular license?
Right, so this is the subject of great debate.
Much debate,
all right?
yeah.
There are so many variables, all right? It's really unclear as to what the tax revenue would be. It's very, very difficult to estimate.
So I don't want to poke hard because we've come so far, so I'm going to leave it at that. But as we have another 2 weeks of conversation to be had, perhaps as we look at this map and those percentages that are still on the table for a very few short number of weeks, and my understanding is once that window closes, we can't decide, because it's going to be like alcohol. However many licenses there are, that's how many there are, right?
Well, not exactly true, because if we act within time, all right, we're always free to amend it after that date.
Can we add?
Yes.
We could add a retail license in 5 years.
Correct.
1 year,
There's
2 years, 3 years,
There's
5
no
years.
cap
Right.
on the time.
No, there's no cap on the time. One other thing, and I think Susan indicated this, but the proposal, at least that the working group has talked about, is to limit the number of both Class and 3-4 licenses. So what was proposed, and this can be changed, but what was proposed was 2 licenses for each Class 3 and Class 4.
Yeah. And again, that's something that could be changed as well.
Correct. Yeah.
I wonder if there's any industry publications on the demand, like how many people are in line for a wholesale license. It seems like the pressure is on the retail. People want the retail.
The discussions that we kind of went through is Parsippany is basically the crossroads of northern New Jersey.
That's right.
Every highway cuts through Parsippany. So I can envision warehousing wanting to be here, even if we don't have dispensaries. They can get here from anywhere, and they can go anywhere from here.
I just don't know, because it can't cross state lines. So it would have to be produced in the state of New Jersey. So if somebody's a production facility, and I have no idea, but I'm thinking as an entrepreneur, if I was a grow facility, I would also try to get my own warehouse facility, because then it removes the need to transport my own product loaded on truck for warehousing. So there's not the exchange, because it can't go very far just by virtue of the fact that
You can't cross state lines, right?
I mean, you would think that the natural business alignment would be to integrate warehousing with either cultivation or manufacturing, right? The working group did consider cultivation and manufacturing. I think what argued against that is, at least right now, the township operates under a scarce resources water order. And it was noted to us in the research that we did that cultivation tends to be a heavy water demand user. And we may not have the water, to, at least right now, to supply that type of operation. Now, in the future, if the township were to opt in and we find more water, that could obviously be changed by mayor and council.
Right. And that would be the case with any sort of indoor agriculture use. You'd be facing those constraints. I mean, it's hard to know what the markets are going to dictate, and a lot depends on where the growing operations are allowed. If they're in areas with high costs of land, then perhaps the business decision is to locate warehousing elsewhere where the land is cheaper and available.
That's right.
And I think, as the council president said, you are at the crossroads. You have a fair amount of available land and buildings already for a warehousing distribution type use. So the hope is that you can fill some of those spaces that may be empty today.
So it's not just the 1%, it's, we filled some buildings.
Right,
Well,
no,
that's
I think
right.
it's great. I think it's excellent.
Because, I mean, you would figure, Council President, I know that you had brought this to our attention in the earlier discussion, but that, with existing buildings are going to be used, they're going to have to be renovated. And if you build a new building, all right, that's obviously new construction, both of which would, generate additional added assessment income for the township.
Exactly.
Yep.
No, I think it's great. Thank you, Susan.
There's limited license, right? The state is going to approve the license. Is that the process?
Correct, and that's the current subject of a lot of public hearing right now at the Cannabis Commission as to how many licenses are going to be available in each class statewide.
So Boonton has a cultivation, right?
For medical, correct.
For medical.
For medical, right.
So wouldn't it be more likely that these warehouses would want, and distribution centers would want to be close to that?
In theory.
I mean, there's a lot
there's
of industrial space, obviously, in Boonton as well.
Right.
So, I think the other thing is the time frame that's allowed to make these decisions is so tight that one of the things that came up in the working group was there really wasn't sufficient time to evaluate.
Right.
One was the water, but there also were some concerns about odor and environmental considerations for the cultivation and the manufacturing. And I don't think we just had enough time to really get all the information we needed to. So that's something, I guess, that we can look at again.
Yeah, and I think Jim, explained it fairly well. I mean, this essentially gets you in the door, buys you time to look at this issue further if down the road you'd like to make changes. Some communities are going the route of just prohibiting it outright to buy themselves time or perhaps never do anything. That's an option too, but I think, it's kind of a nice compromise was our sense, is allowing some limited operation in a way that makes sense. And you can always go back and revisit whether you want to expand it.
Right, something like the medical marijuana stores would, that's 2%?
That is 2%. And of course, to get what's called a medical ATC license, alternative treatment center license, under the prior rounds of licensing, you had to be vertically integrated.
I'm sorry?
The operation had to be vertically integrated. So the person who was the license holder had to be able to grow, manufacture, and then sell. Now, you didn't have to do it all in one location, but you had to have the ability, all right, to, you know, to basically have a self-contained operation, at least in the prior licensing rounds.
Before you could have a medical?
Correct.
Yeah, the one in
That's-
Woodbridge that we visited had that.
Correct.
They were, yeah, growing.
Does
Right.
medical licensing go away under this?
So this is part of the great debate also, and this is something that the Cannabis Commission, I think, is going to have to regulate in the area on, is that, how are they going to reconcile, two different regulatory programs? And there was a Cannabis Commission meeting today where they actually discussed some of the zoning implications, so I don't think they're quite there yet, but we will definitely see, I think, a regulatory scheme that will attempt to harmonize and make medical, all right, and recreational work together.
So it's anticipated then that someplace like the facility in Woodbridge would then be able to do retail as well as medical.
Right, it's all going to depend on what the Cannabis Commission decides.
How many
Right.
licenses
And
they
about-
allow one holder to hold.
Correct.
And as I recall, right, Emily, that was on a main road, wasn't it? Like a highway?
Right next to a boat dealership.
Yeah, that's right.
And the boat dealership had been broken into twice, and the medical facility had never been broken into. It's an interesting fact I remember from that day.
Yeah.
Is there a world in which we could approve, just hypothetically, could we approve a retail license, but then hold it and not grant it until we see how things shake out?
Probably not. If you give yourself the ability, all right, that then confers a right on somebody to apply. And if you got a conforming application that met all the license standards, you'd have to issue the license. Now, you could limit the number of retail licenses, but once you establish, the framework to license and then to give somebody the opportunity to apply, you'd have to be able to issue the license.
But I think, to Jim's point, is that this ordinance allows flexibility on the council's part to expand for the next 5 years, continue to have those conversations. I think that if someone came and made after the 22nd of August, we have our 4 possible licenses, however it goes, we still have the ability to amend this ordinance. Failure to act means we have a 5-year prohibition where we couldn't do anything even if we wanted to. So we could start a conversation, for all intents and purposes, on the 23rd of August that talks about retail or more class 2 or whatever, because we now have that ability. And if someone were to come in and make a overwhelming, compelling argument to the council, by the time they got their license and went through it, we can amend this ordinance in 2 readings and a 20-day estoppel period. It's going to take somebody with a retail license a lot longer than that to get a license from the state of New Jersey and go through all the rest of that.
Yeah, that's
Our
right.
portion at the ordinance level is extremely short compared to the other regulatory requirements.
Right, that's true. One of the other consequences of a default would be that there's no tax available. The only way you get the tax is through enacting a local ordinance. So if the default were to operate, all right, you would end up with the establishments in accordance with zoning as was described, but you wouldn't be able to tax.
You would have the expense, but no revenue.
That's correct, right.
So I think for the public who's in some cases eager for the retail opportunities, I think we hear you, and I think patience and, you can't turn a cruise ship on a dime is an important, by opening this door, by making sure we have the ordinance in place, voted on as the working group has set out, it gives us the opportunity to see how the market shakes out as we get further down the road.
Right. And this conversation is happening in every town, large and small, even some of the urban places that you would think would say yes automatically are really weighing their options here.
Are there any, I think Morristown, yes, and Boonton, yes?
Jim, I think you were aware of some that had said yes or no.
Morristown is considering, I
Montclair
don't
might
think they've
be saying
enacted
yes.
anything.
Montclair, maybe?
Montclair already has a medical ATC, and I believe that there's a move afoot to do an adult use recreational also.
How about Boonton?
I think Hoboken as well.
Boonton, I don't know.
I believe Dover said no.
Did they?
Dover and Morris.
Yeah, Dover said no.
Mount Olive, maybe.
Okay,
I read they were saying no.
right.
Yep, great.
Could you just go back to time frame for a minute?
Yes.
So as Susan noted, the action on the 21st really cuts it pretty close because we have to have the ordinance adoption published, and that's when the estoppel period runs. The estoppel period is 20 days, and we don't control the newspaper publication schedule. So I would urge that it's really pencils down by July 6th.
Yeah.
Because we'll be cutting it pretty close if we run into a problem with getting the notice of adoption published after July 21st.
Yep.
So.
Paying attention to that daily record?
Right. Unfortunately, all these deadlines were set, pursuant to state legislation.
Yeah. Sure.
We didn't have a choice in any of this.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you again for your patience. I really do appreciate it.
Now you have to turn all the lights on.
Slowly. I sent my electrician to do that. I kind of like it.
Motion.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
We're adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night,
Bye now.
everyone.
Good to see everybody.
I'm gonna go to your running store.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.